Good evening, everyone. My name is Sri Sundaram. I'm the Dean for the KTM School of Business and Finance and the MUMA Campus Dean here at the St. Petersburg campus. It is absolutely my pleasure to welcome all of you this evening for the last of our three-part series, I'm Speaking series. Your response to this has been tremendous, and we really appreciate your participation. For us at the College of Business, aka the MUMA College of Business, and at the USF, this is an important issue. When we look at diversity, inclusion, and equity, this is something that is in front of us every day as we try to educate our students and work very much closely with our faculty and staff as we deal with these issues and also support our community in helping them deal with these issues. So with that said, this three-part series that we put together was really to focus on how we can increase the awareness and also help you with how to deal with these situations. And I know today we have two wonderful speakers, Sam Obey and Dr. Ruth Mayfield, that will be talking to you, working through exercises on addressing microaggressions in the workplace. So I know there's going to be a tremendous program this evening. And I also wanted to indicate to you, as you may have already seen, the certificate that we are offering in DEI from the MUMA College of Business. We have over 130,000 folks registered from across the world. So this is really a continuation of our effort to make sure that we stay committed to this very important issue. With that said, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Rebecca Harris, who leads the Women in Leadership Initiative for us, along with the rest of the team. Rebecca, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. And on behalf of the Women in Leadership Initiative team, which includes David O'Neill, Becca Vigil, and Lisa Yaxo, I want to make sure you, Dean Sundaram, know how much we appreciate the support you've given us and this series, I'm Speaking. I want to thank everyone here for joining us. We titled the individual events of this series, Conversations That Move, Conversations That Inspire, and Conversations That Teach. I hope that you've already been moved and inspired and that tonight we will learn together how to be allies in the workplace or the classroom in the face of microaggressions. Just giving you the heads up now to be prepared to explore and share in breakout rooms about midway through the program. And let's all just trust that we're in a safe place to make ourselves vulnerable and learn from one another in a respectful way. I, for one, still have a lot to learn about how to use my own privilege to support my colleagues and my students. I'm confident that our two facilitators tonight will help bring all of us into this tough conversation. Sam Obaid is Program Director at Community Tampa Bay, a local organization that works for a community free of discrimination. In addition, she's an internationally renowned spoken word poet. Both professionally and personally, she uses her voice to stand up for marginalized identities every waking hour. Dr. Ruth Mayfield joins us from USF's Institute on Black Life, as well as USF's College of Education, where she's Associate Professor of Math Education. She's a staunch champion of improving diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM fields. Together, these two facilitators provide us with a perfect mix of practical and academic knowledge and experience, combined with their passion for pursuing justice in our community. I'd like to give them, along with Dr. Michelle Madden and Sky Dahan, one extra shout out for being our co-creators to this entire series. It's been such an enlightening journey for us on the WALI team, and we are forever grateful to the four of you. As for this evening's plan, our facilitators will start with some introductory remarks on ally training, followed by a self-reflection exercise by all of us in the audience. They will then provide us with some different microaggression scenarios for us to discuss in the breakout rooms for about 15 to 20 minutes. While we'd like you to keep your cameras off and your microphones on mute right now, we will encourage your active participation in the breakout rooms with your videos on and your microphones on as well. We'll then reconvene to debrief on our breakout rooms, and we'll wrap up the evening by 6:15. I do want to remind you that we are recording this event, so you can check in with us later if you'd like to access the recording. And so now I'll call on Sam Obaid and Ruth Mayfield to take the program from here. And again, thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a meaningful evening.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Good evening, folks. Like Rebecca Harris said, my name is Sam, and I'm the program director of an anti-discrimination nonprofit organization called Community Tampa Bay. Joining me this evening and co-facilitating this training session with me is none other than USF's very own Dr. Ruth Mayfield. Dr. Sears, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruth Mayfield, and I'm an associate professor for math education at the University of South Florida. At the university, I'm the current chair of the Black Employees Steering Committee Professional Development Series, which facilitates the Enlightenment Series. I'm a faculty advisor for the Institute on Black Lives. I'm also the principal investigator of the grant titled Examination of the Historical and Modern Day Impact of Structural Racisms on the Lives of Black People in the City of St. Petersburg, Florida. Hence, I situate my identity and intersectionality as a Black female STEM educating professional who works in the Tampa Bay area for this presentation. Therefore, I am a representative of multiple minority groups. Microaggression in the workforce may be evident in the form of micro-insults and micro-invalidations. It is exhibited in various forms of prejudice and discrimination against isms, be it race, gender, language, age, disability, sexuality, etc. Unfortunately, many microaggressions contribute to the various tiers of the pyramid of prejudice. Notably, it starts with the acts of bias and prejudice, which are usually non-criminal incidents. These acts of bias may be evident in the forms of joke, stereotypical remarks, or non-inclusive language. Unfortunately, such behaviors often escalate on the pyramid and grows to acts of discrimination, resulting in civil matter. In the worst case scenario, these microaggressive behaviors can result in violence and genocide, which are criminal matters in the legal system. I acknowledge that I noticed and experienced microaggression within the workplace in which little, if anything, was done by colleagues, mid-level managers, or administrators. Fox and Stallworth in their research acknowledge that racial and ethnic bullying within the workplace may include making intimidating eye contacts and gestures, expressing demeaning comments about you in front of your coworkers or clients, be it your students or your customers, providing excessively harsh criticism of your performance on your annual review, withholding relevant information from you, taking credit for your work, blaming you for errors for which you have no responsibility, threatening you with job loss or demotion, interrupts you while you're speaking, applies rules and punishment inconsistently for white versus Black employees, and spread false rumors about you professionally and personally. Microaggression may also engage in intentionally sabotaging or destroying materials essential to completing your work. In many instances, these experiences negatively impact the individual emotionally, socially, and physically. These microaggressive experiences are among the primary reason why individuals leave their place of employment. Hence, to promote inclusive excellence and maintain an equitable and productive workforce, policies and practices must be implemented to address these behaviors. Admittedly, it is emotionally exhausting having to advocate for oneself all the time. Hence, allies are needed to help create an equitable and inclusive workplace environment. According to William and Sharif, allies are people who recognize the unearned privilege they receive from society patterns of injustice and take action to change it. For example, allies may be a white person who works to end racism, men who challenge sexism, heterosexual people who fight against homophobias, and non-Indigenous people who actively engage in decolonizing processes. Thus, And an ally works to disrupt and end oppressive behavior for underrepresented identities within their workplace and communities. Allies advocate for social justice and oppressed individuals' rights. They establish authentic and trustworthy relationships and promote accountability and the need to dismantle structures of inequalities that exist. Being an ally is not a one and done occurrence. Rather, it is an ongoing process. The literature frequently delineates between a white ally and being a white savior as it relates to race. For instance, Spannerman and Smith, 2017, they noted, and I quote, a white ally, A, demonstrate nuanced understanding of institutional racism and white privilege. B, they enact a continual process of self-reflection about their own racism and positionality. C, they express a sense of responsibility and community to commitment to using their racial privilege in ways that promote equity. D, they engage in actions to disrupt racism in the status quo on micro and macro levels. E, they participate in coalition building and working in solidarity with people of color. And F, they encounter resistance from other white individuals, end of quote. Whereas a white savior is an individual whose helpful acts are for their own personal benefits, their own personal recognition, and their own professional advantages. Thus, a white ally is an individual who has an authentic commitment to help people of color dismantle racism and promote equitable opportunities for all. So our goal is to promote white allyship. Erskine and Belmoria identified practices of anti-racist white allyship behavior. Mainly, the individual engages in critical self-reflexivity. They acknowledge and notice their own intersectionality. They build quality and trustworthy relationships, demonstrate courage to engage in positive defiance, and disrupt the problematic dominant behavior. The allies also provide mentorship, support, and protection from negative dynamics within the workplace. Various instruments can be used to help to measure the nature of an individual allyship. Such instruments may include the anti-racism behavioral inventory or the interpersonal racial allyship scale. Utilizing such tools can help individuals engage in a self-analysis of their own bias and belief and how it helps or hinders anti-racist initiatives. I recommend some do's and don'ts in being an ally. Items on my do's list are as follows. Do be willing to listen. Do be willing to acknowledge your biases and beliefs that impact your decision making. Do educate yourself so you can be aware of the historical trends of oppression and current strategies that can be used to address them. Do reflect on and plan ways to engage in systemic changes to dismantle oppressive structural systems. Do use your personal and political capital to advocate for equity and justice for underrepresented identities. And do your best to be better than you were the day before and become a better ally. The items on my do not list are as follows. Do not attempt to devalue oppressed groups' narratives and experiences by asserting we all struggle, thereby reducing the significance of their pain and suffering. Do not assert that you know what is best for underrepresented identities without gaining their input or listening to their voices. Do not assume that everyone who is an underrepresented identity is oppressed. Do not engage in micro insults and micro invalidations. And finally, do not attempt to take credit for the work of underrepresented identities or other advocates who have worked in the space before you or beside you, because it's together we achieve the goal. Admittedly, being an ally is beneficial for everyone. It contributes to an inclusive and diverse workplace environment. It improves job satisfactions and staff retention rates, and it enhances connections that can positively, directly, and indirectly influence your workplace environment. It can also help the ally because it builds authentic and trustworthy relationship. It improves their perception of their self-respect, their integrity, and self-confidence. It helps the oppressed groups, which for this talk is focusing on women of color. Reason being, it provides an opportunity to thrive within the workplace, develop a sense of belonging, and a perception that they are supported and are given the opportunity to develop and advance. Finally, it is beneficial to the organization because it contributes to the organization's overall effectiveness, productivity, creativity, and culture, thereby making the organization a preferred employer due to its commitment to justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sam will now describe how to combat microaggression with a response, not a reaction, and how to differentiate between microaggressions and compliment. Sam?
First of all, Dr. Sears, thank you for that absolute fire introduction to allyship and microaggressions. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much. So as Dr. Sears said, it is without question that allies play a huge role in any shot that we have of dismantling exclusionary, racist, white supremacist cultures in the workplace, right? But for many of us, the term allyship may not be as intentional as it needs to be. Too often we think that allyship is the sentiment of not actively harming a community, when really allyship is doing every single thing we possibly can in our power to prevent harm from coming to a marginalized community, whether that harm is interpersonal or institutional. Allyship is a doing word. It isn't a call to action, it is action itself. And yet, as allies, we have to question what action is appropriate. Because fam, while discrimination is alive and well, it doesn't always show up in large, physically violent ways, right? Like Dr. Sears mentioned earlier with the pyramid of hate, most discrimination rears its ugly head in the most subtle and inconspicuous of ways. As allies, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are equipped with the tools that we need to combat discrimination so we steer clear of saviorship and commit to allyship at all levels. For this, we need to give ourselves a healthy dose of self-doubt so that we never forget to self-reflect, a solid education so we never forget that this is mostly about the journey if we ever have to arrive at the destination, and a universe of humility so we never forget that allyship isn't about ourselves, it's about the communities that we are allying with. So let's talk microaggressions now. Microaggressions can be tricky. Think of them like backhanded compliments, where someone is giving you a compliment, but questioning your competence for something all at the same time, right? It's very disguised, it's very confusing, and very tricky. That is the best word that I can use to describe it. But the difference between a microaggression and a backhanded compliment is that a microaggression is rooted in identity, while a backhanded compliment relies on an individual's general aptitude and comments on it, right? So stay off video and do keep your mics off, but I want you to kind of do this activity along with me, okay? So for example, if you said to me, Sam, I love your hair, would that be a microaggression or would it be a compliment? It would be a compliment because I do have great hair and you're not associating that in any way, shape, or form with any of my identities, right? But if you say, Sam, you're really strong for a girl, microaggression or compliment? Microaggression, because you are identifying my identity and saying for that identity, I'm all right. But otherwise, I wouldn't be, right? So let's do one more. Sam, you have a great accent. Microaggression or compliment? This one is a little bit more nuanced, right? So take a second to think about it. Sam, you have a great accent. Compliment. I do have a great accent. It's fantastic. I know this very well. It is a compliment. It's not a microaggression because you're not telling me I have a great accent for something and comparing me to something else. However, if you said, Sam, you speak really good English, it comes from the presumption that people who look like me and come from the spaces that I do don't speak good English, and therefore you find the need to compliment me on my English. But that is a microaggression. It is in fact not a compliment, right? Okay, so let's take this one step further and practice. For the following exercise, you're going to need some sort of writing utensil and something to write on. So paper, pen, phone, laptop, stylus, whatever you fancy, whatever your favorite writing equipment is. I'm going to give you two sets of statements, okay? You will determine which one is a compliment, which one is a microaggression, and state your reason for doing so. You're not going to be sharing this out, but you are going to be, this is the self-reflection piece of being an ally. We're going to be thinking about putting our finger on how we know something is a microaggression and how we know something is a compliment. Because when we can identify something, then we can do a better job of combating it, all right? Okay, so your first set of statements are, the first statement, you are so organized. Second statement, you are so OCD. Which one of this is a compliment and which one of this is a microaggression? Are both compliments or both microaggressions? All right? The answer, take a couple of seconds and write down your reasoning for it. Okay, your answer, you're so organized, is a compliment because you're complimenting the person's organizational skills. You are so OCD, like Linda is listed in the chat, is in fact a microaggression because you are calling out somebody's mental health and you are pointing that, connecting what they do in their life to that mental health when you might actually have absolutely no indication, expertise, or business commenting on their mental health, right? Which is what makes you are so OCD a microaggression. It is none of your business. Your second set of statements, I love your shoes, fashion sense, taste in music, etc. That's your first statement. Your second statement, you are the whitest Black person I know. I repeat that. Your first statement, I love your shoes, fashion sense, taste in music, etc. Your second statement, you are the whitest Black person I know. Take about 10 seconds. All right. I love your shoes, fashion sense, taste in music, etc. It's a direct compliment. You are looking at what that person enjoys and saying you enjoy it, you relate to it, and you enjoy it. You're the whitest Black person I know indicates that should they not be the whitest Black person you know, they couldn't possibly have such wonderful taste, right? So you are you are minimizing their Blackness to their whiteness. You are associating and dismissing their Blackness and connecting that to whiteness and saying the only way you can be good at these things is for you to be white, right? Hardcore microaggression without question. All right, next one. You have so much experience for your age. Statement one. You have so much experience for your age. Statement two. That insight is very valuable. Take a few seconds. Which one's a microaggression? Which one's a compliment? What is your reasoning? You have so much experience for your age assumes that young people do not know as much as older people do. Age too is a social construct and is not a direct commentary on anybody's experience. You have so much experience is a valid statement, but you have so much experience for your age undermines a younger person and determines that they should possibly not have that much experience as somebody who might be twice as old as them. That insight is very valuable. You're not talking about their age, you're talking about the actual experience and what that brings to the table. What that brings to the table is insight. That insight is very valuable. See what I'm saying? So easy to give somebody a compliment without having to microaggress them if you can only think about the value that they actually bring to the table. All right? You've got 3 more to go. So your now, I think, 4th set of statements is, let me guess, other than English, you speak Spanish. So first statement. Let me guess, other than English, you speak Spanish. Second statement, I think it's enviable that you speak more than one language. Slightly trickier, yeah? We're getting a little bit more nuanced as we continue this conversation, right? So you look at somebody potentially who has brown skin like mine and you say, let me guess, other than English, you speak Spanish, indicating that all people from all countries who are not white look the same and speak the only other second language in the world. False. So many other languages in the world, and many of us speak different languages. Many of us speak different dialects. It is purely an assumption, and that guess, because it's a guess and not a question, makes it a microaggression, right? Other than English, you speak Spanish. That really says more about the person commenting and their narrow-mindedness or lack of, I wouldn't want to say awareness or knowledge of other languages than it does about the person themselves. But now that person has to go ahead and defend themselves and say, no, no, this is where I'm from, this is what we speak in that space, and then continue to educate this human, which would have been a lot more welcome had that human showed some compassion and actually asked a question instead of making an assumption. I think it's enviable that you speak more than one language. That is a compliment. Yeah, it's enviable that some people have the privilege of learning more than one language and some people have the necessity of learning more than one language, right? Okay, your last two sets. You have great skin, first statement. You're pretty for a Black girl, second statement. I'll give you 5 seconds on this one. Let's move faster. All right, you have great skin, like hair, such a fantastic compliment. You're pretty for a Black girl. Black women are absolutely wonderfully gorgeous and don't need to be pretty for a Black girl. You are associating their appearance with that of whiteness. If you remove whiteness from the picture, you create the possibility of providing somebody a compliment. But the moment you create a comparison to what you consider normal and tell somebody that they are pretty for a Black girl, you have just microaggressed them and highly insulted them, right? Last but definitely not the least, and I'm sure many of us being in the university system, institutionalized academia system, have heard these ones before. First statement, you are a credit to your race. Second statement, thank you for sharing your expertise. 3 seconds on this one. You are a credit to your race. Fam, that is certainly a microaggression because it puts your race, the race, whichever that race, typically a Black or brown race that we are talking about, at a much, much reduced level than we would think about the majority races. You create a value statement on the race by saying you are a credit to your race, meaning your entire race is problematic, but you are the shining glory of your race, where an entire race can be full of experience, full of expertise, full of wonderful things to offer. And instead, we choose to tokenize one human in order to make the entire race seem diminished, dismissed, and reduced to what we have in our mind through our stereotypes and bias. However, thank you for sharing your expertise. That's actually one of my favorite compliments, right? Because first of all, it comes from a place of gratitude. Secondly, it comes from a place of humility. And third, it recognizes what that person is actually bringing to the table. The same way that you say that insight is very valuable for somebody who might be a young human. Thank you for sharing your expertise brings us to the table where we recognize what that person actually has to offer, has to hold in terms of their actual expertise. And we show gratitude and humility in saying thank you to them. All right. So I know I can't see many of you, but I think I can make a pretty honest, educated guess that many of you shook your heads in exasperation at how inappropriate and egregious some of these statements are. Understandably so. But remember what our role here is, allies. As annoyed as we might be, the consequences for communities facing these microaggressions are far, far worse than any annoyance we may experience momentarily, right? So in addition to being able to identify microaggressions, we must also learn how to productively respond to them. This means turning every such situation / comment into a teachable moment. Keep your mics off and repeat after me. It is 2021 and nobody gets to be ignorant on my watch. That's the motivation that we need to go through with being allies. With that, I'm going to turn back over to Dr. Sears, who's going to take us through a small group exercise where we will practice our hand at creating productive educational responses when faced either by interpersonal microaggression or systemic racism. Dr. Sears?
Thank you, Sam. In your groups, you will review an assigned scenario. So you will be provided responses from an ally perspective. You'll provide responses from an ally perspective with the goal of promoting inclusive and equitable workplace communities. To help you with this, you will consider the following 4 key criteria while creating the response. 1, if your scenario includes a specific individual who is being microaggressed, how will you ensure you have their consent to ally for them? 2, how do we respond to the scenario in an educational and constructive manner? Tell me exactly what you would say to me if I was the person you were speaking to. 3, what are the advantages of responding to this particular scenario in positive and constructive manner? List them out. Does your list meet the response you've created? And 4, what will a well thought out intentional response to the specific scenario communicate to your colleagues, supervisor, and especially those who belong to the marginalized community? Additionally, consider barriers you may experience and how you can pivot to ensure the conversations and/or intervention is productive. So you will now be placed into small breakout rooms for 20 minutes to formulate your response.
I think everyone is backed up as is.
Okay, great. So welcome back, everyone. We sure you had an incredible discussion and you can't wait to hear from each group. So what we're going to do is the facilitator for each group will provide a brief response summarizing what the group discussed, and in the interest of time, they're going to limit their responses to 1 minute. So what we ask is the facilitators will identify the number of the scenario, because the scenarios will be listed in chat, and really articulate the key summaries of the responses, like key ideas that were shared. So we're going to start with group 1 and then continue in that fashion. So group 1.
Okay, I think that was me. This is David O'Neill. My group had scenario 1, and I think 2 key insights that came out were, one, you know, if somebody approaches you like that, you need to validate how they might be feeling about the situation and ask what sort of help they need. 2 examples were shared from the group where parallel things happened. Wasn't that scenario perfectly, but one, the teacher was working with an intern and they had formed working agreements. So when they butted up against some challenging issues, they were able to revisit the agreements and you know, realign to each other. And then the second was a woman who was working in an organization where many of the customers or clients, it's a healthcare facility, definitely microaggressed against her. And their CEO actually stepped in to address the issue, which I thought was a really important demonstration of ethical leadership.
Okay, awesome. Group 2.
I can go for group 2. Oh, or is Tilly going first?
Yes, I'm group 2. Our group had trouble with the way this person labeled a group of employees, calling them marginalized employees, and also just the fact that I think what we decided was that the coordinator of the meeting made a decision to schedule a meeting on employees' lunch hour without their consent or even polling who was available. So we concluded that you know, whoever that lots of people, everyone who was called to the meeting should have been consulted first, and it should be equitable for all. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Group 3.
And
Lisa, do you want? Oh,
I can wait. It's okay.
no. Do you want to go first, Lisa? Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. We talked about the need to reaffirm what the original speaker was saying, and the importance of reaffirming what they're saying, perhaps giving personal experiences that are similar that you've seen, and being able to say, no, I disagree with this other person who's saying that the police is just doing their job. Providing that support, challenging those assumptions, asking for them to consider other alternatives, and doing so in a constructive and polite way, not using any names, not calling people any names, anything like that, but really consistently reaffirming that you have seen this, and you're just reaffirming what the original person said and making them feel supported.
You. Thank you so much. Group 4. Group 5.
5. I don't know if group 4 is there though. Yeah.
I could speak for group 5. So group 5, basically our scenario was in response to a staff member making a statement about how they grew up in a very diverse neighborhood or community, and they claim that they're very accepting, and they don't understand why people don't think the way that they do. So some of the conclusions that my group came to and the thoughts that they had was trying to, if you were in that group, lots of the members of my room said they would try to encourage the person who made that statement to share and reflect. Maybe ask them to define what accepting means to them, so that they can encourage that to become a teaching and learning moment. A lot of the members of the group encouraged more of a positive reaction versus a positive response rather than a negative reaction, to encourage more of a learning moment, and for all of the members of the group to get something out of the situation.
Thank you. Group 6.
Dr. Shears, we doubled up, so we'll go, why don't we do 1 through 5 one more time?
Okay. So in this regard, the only group who was missing was the representative for group 4. So is anyone representative for group 4 present? Okay, great. So what we're going to do is, based on your feedback, we got a lot of rich insights. So we're really grateful that you had such a productive discourse. So the diverse feedback on the scenarios highlighted the complexities of being an ally and the various approaches an individual may use, different strategies to address challenging situations. The scenarios also provided us an opportunity to reflect on the extent we were the agents of the problem, to active bystanders, to individuals that truly exhibited true allyship. Thus, we must seek to learn from our past mistakes and seek to create better tomorrows in workplaces that are equitable, inclusive, and diverse. As you continue to move through the continuum of being an ally, particularly from being apathetic to becoming aware, to being active, and subsequently an advocate, I encourage you to continue to educate yourself and engage in self-reflective practices so you do better and be better. I reaffirm, do better and be better, thereby becoming a catalyst for change in which you also inspire others to do better based on inclusive practices and policies that are created and subsequently enacted. I encourage you not to get weary in well-doing and press on despite the fact you may have challenges along the way. I conclude with the words of Martin Luther King Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thus, as we engage in protests to dismantle inequities that exist in the workplace, we must also exhibit the ideals of the Hope Wheel. Notably, as we protest, we must reflect on ways to restore, create, inspire, invest, and love. We must seek to work collaboratively and promote inclusive excellence and equitable workplace environments within the Tampa Bay community. With that said, I will turn the evening over to the Women's in Leadership Initiative Mentorship Program Director, Ms. Lisa Yasko. Lisa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sears. What a wonderful evening we have had tonight. So thank you to Dr. Sri Sundaram for opening our evening, to Dr. Rebecca Harris for hosting our event this evening, and to our co-creators, Dr. Ruth Mayfield Sears and Sam Obaid, for facilitating this important conversation. Thank you all truly for your participation in this journey and your willingness to come together and do this work. And to our breakout facilitators as well. It is through our strong connection, through our mutual commitment, that we will make progress happen for each other. As Dr. Sears said, I'm Lisa Yaxo. I'm the Online MBA Program Administrator and the Women in Leadership Initiatives Mentorship Program Director, and I'm honored to close our time together this evening and this event series we have had over the past 3 months. After the gruesome events of last year, with the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many other people of color, we in Wally decided to direct our work towards race and representation. We started by aligning our thought leadership series and mentorship program toward this focus. Tonight's event was our third and final event in our I'm Speaking Thought Leadership series, which we named in honor of Vice President Kamala Harris's famous words on the Senate floor as she was continually interrupted. Please be on the lookout for a survey about this series to help us continue to improve our work and our future event information as well. Academic research comprises the other important component of our thought leadership work. This fall, look for results from 2 Walleye-sponsored research programs on Black female entrepreneurs and the benefits of incorporating Black female leaders in Florida's green economy. And this year, in our Wally mentorship program, we are supporting graduate business students who are women of color or their allies, holding events to help our future leaders navigate the waters of doing this anti-racism work while also succeeding in their individual careers and finding the mentors who are industry leaders and also people of color or their allies. As we built these programs, we recognized then, and we especially do now, that this work must continue both in Wally and outside of it. The Muma College of Business, of which we are a part within the Bishop Center for Ethical Leadership, recently launched the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Workplace Certificate Program. And over 125,000 people are participating in it. That is huge. If you did not have a chance to sign up for this certificate, you may still watch it on the YouTube videos on the USF Muma College of Business channel. We are putting that link in the chat. Recently, USF President Corral committed to hiring a Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equal Opportunity, and to strengthening USF's commitment to this critical work. Together, these events, this commitment, and most importantly, your engagement in this series and participations in trainings like the certificate program or engagement in the USF St. Petersburg campus's work to create a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Center, and many other similar events and programs across the USF system collectively shout out something I think is a huge step forward for our region. Tampa Bay is speaking up and saying, we need racial and gender equity. We need to do anti-racist work, and we need to do it now. That is so impactful. 125,000 people, and you here tonight is so impactful. To sustain this work, we encourage you to stand up and say, as I am saying right now, I am anti-racist. This is the work I am doing and will do to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. I commit to reflecting. I commit to being real and to realizing I'm not going to get it right all the time. I'm going to make mistakes, I'll make amends, and I'll do better the next time. We encourage you also to engage in the programs offered by our co-creators who have put this amazing series together. Dr. Michelle Madden and the USF Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equal Opportunity. Dr. Ruth Mayfield and the Institute on Black Life. Sam Obeid and the Community Tampa Bay. Sky Idean of Afro Curators. We have dropped these links in the chat as well. And lastly, we encourage you to believe in something most people don't think is possible. Most people think the pie is only so big, and you can only slice it so many ways. That's a fear-based mentality. We ask you instead, think of a bigger pie. Why can't the pie be big enough to support the success and the well-being, the life of all people, of all races, of all ethnicities, and all genders? Ultimately, that's what's on the table. That is why we must ensure there is a seat at the table for all voices, every day, every table. We are so grateful to have spent this time learning, feeling, and connecting with you all tonight and throughout this series. That's all from us. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.